Nicholas.
Thank you, Peter, for the introduction, and for everyone for coming out tonight. So yes, I was going to introduce myself a little bit, but I think Peter did a pretty good job. I don't think anything else is necessary. Yes, I'm coming from California, United States. I've been there about 11 years practicing family medicine. I guess I could introduce my family. My wife is here tonight, Anne, and my daughter, Rebecca, and my son, Daniel. We have Miriam. She's somewhere else, so we have another child not here tonight, too. So again, just thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. As you can see, our topic is going to be ideal health. So that's obviously saying that we can all improve, and there's going to be some simple things that we can learn tonight that hopefully we can incorporate into our lives to move towards that goal of ideal health. Now, when we're talking about medicine, narrow or broad topic? Very, very broad. In fact, we have so many specialists that have to cover, cardiologists, pulmonologists, nephrologists. So tonight, we're going to try to cover all that. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I'm going to try to condense it down to bite-sized pieces that we can take with us and hopefully retain more in our long-term memory. Okay, so you may know who this guy is. Obviously, a very good reputation for high intelligence, right? And then I believe it was a New York Times journalist attributes this quote to him, and he definitely brought this out more in a lecture that he did in 1933. And I like this quote a lot. Everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. So indeed, what he worked on, the universe, cosmology, is so complex that even with all the advanced things that we know today, we still don't have any clue. Well, we don't have a complete knowledge of how complex our universe is. But he did a very good job of trying to condense that down to one equation. Anyone know it? E equals mc squared, right? So we're not going to do something that profound this evening, but we're going to follow the same principle. We're going to try to take a complex topic, medicine, and condense it down to something that is as simple as possible, not trying to oversimplify it though. Okay, and the good news is that for good health and to understand the principles we're going to go over tonight, you don't have to have PhD or MD behind your name. The principles, although we could get into a lot of detail about them, we're going to try to get it so we can just understand them in a very practical way. All we need for this topic or anything is just to approach it with an open mind, open heart, and hopefully that way we can comprehend and incorporate the information in a positive way. Okay? So let's get into the principles we're going to go over tonight. One of the main things I want to bring through the talk tonight is the idea that there is no one thing that is like the thing that's going to give us good health. In fact, I kind of get leery if someone comes to you and says, or comes to me and says, just buy my supplement, or just take this one tea, and that'll be it. That's enough for you to be healthy. Alarm bells should go off in your mind if someone is kind of doing that, because there is no one thing that's going to give us optimum, ideal health. It's going to be a holistic picture. In my country, 150 years ago, there was a reputation for a bunch of guys going around pushing carts, selling their tonics, saying, you just buy my tonic and you're going to be healthy. And we call them snake oil salesmen. Now, that term even sticks today. People are trying to con you into buying something that's really not what it's billed to be. So we don't want to get into the idea that, just one supplement or just one injection a week or just one of anything is going to give me ideal health. Key concept. Yeah, I can cherry pick and just do things that I like, but the way to really get to what we're trying, ideal health, we have to look at the whole picture. That's where we get this word, holistic, right? We want to take into account all the elements for good health. I've known people, maybe you have as well, that are sticklers for one part, let's say their diet. Very, very strict on what they eat. But what they drink, not so much. In fact, many times I was like, are you sure you want to drive home tonight? Type of thing, because like, I know you ate healthy, but it doesn't look like you were drinking that healthy. Again, that's what we want to kind of go away from. We want to go to a holistic approach where we're taking everything into account. Okay, so the word you see up there is just kind of a help you remember type of thing. It's an acronym. Maybe most of us or some of us are acquainted with it. It's called NEWSTART. Each letter is going to stand for something represents the principle of health that we're going to go over tonight. So let's look at them. What does NEWSTART stand for? Okay, there you see it. Let's go over each one, and then we're going to touch on each one in a little bit more detail. Now, I can and have lectured on any one of these for a full hour. If we go into a lot of detail, we can go into a lot of time. But like I said before, we're going to just touch on the main points of all these health principles. So NEWSTART stands for nutrition, exercise, water, sunlight, temperance, air, rest, and trust in divine help. So, for good reason, N is the first letter, because this is probably the most important, what we put into our bodies. Do you have the saying here in Malaysia, you are what you eat? I think that's pretty much a universal expression, right? You are what you eat, because very literally, what we put into our mouths, eventually our body breaks down into the basic elements and uses that to make new tissue. We're constantly being replenished, and what we eat becomes what we are, basically, right? So let's look at the definition of nutrition. That's what we'll start with. The process of providing or obtaining the food necessary for health and growth. So we've known for a very, very long time, many centuries, that what I eat is key to my health. It's one of the main things, if not the most important thing. Now, Hippocrates may or may not have said this quote, but I think it's safe to say that he would agree with it. Let food be thy medicine, and medicine thy food. Again, showing that even back in his day, in fact, all physicians have to take a modified oath called the Hippocratic Oath, because he's considered the father of medicine, right? What I eat is crucial to maintaining ideal health. And again, over and over throughout the centuries, we've known this. If you know about, for example, the British sailors, their nickname was Limey, right? And we started to notice that, man, a bunch of these sailors get this disease where their gums start bleeding, their skin goes really bad, and then they die. And then they figured out, hey, if we just give these people, these sailors, lime juice, they don't get this sickness called scurvy, and they survive. What they didn't know is scurvy is just simply a deficiency of vitamin C. And so by giving them limes, they were protecting against this. Also gout. We knew something was up. They used to think a little demon was in people's big toe eating because it hurt so bad. But later we discovered it just simply has to do with our diet. You know, these gout uric acid crystals form, again, mainly based on what we eat. So the big question then is, what is the ideal diet? If I'm trying to achieve ideal health, and I see, and it's been shown throughout the centuries that a healthy diet is key for this, what is the ideal diet? Over the past few decades, a lot of, we call them fad diets, have come and gone. I know in my family even Weight Watchers, Nutrisystem, help me out here, South Beach, more recently the keto diet. All these things come, but then if you wait around a few months, maybe a few years, Who here has heard recently about the South Beach diet? That was big in California for a while. Not so much anymore. So what we are wanting to get is something that is going to be more than just a passing fad, something that may temporarily work, maybe give me a little bit of weight loss, but is not sustainable. It's not really backed up by science as something that can be long-lasting and giving me this ideal health. So again, I still haven't answered the question. What is an ideal diet? One of the main divides today that you'll see debated among experts is plant-based or animal-based. And let's just be upfront and honest right now. There's not a consensus among the experts. But more and more we're seeing scientific evidence come out that's tipping the scales heavily in the favor of what we call plant-based diet. So much so that some of the mainstream, even media, is acknowledging this. There's documentaries come out. Maybe you've seen the documentary Game Changer. Basically, this is showing that some of the myths associated with plant-based diet are not only are they not true, the opposite is true. Athletic performance, cardiovascular disease, all these things we're seeing are benefits scientifically shown to come from a plant-based diet. So, if I am choosing a diet, I also have to recognize what should guide me. Because let's again be very, very honest. If I'm used to a heavy animal-based product, yeah, if I fry something in butter, I add a generous amount of salt and or sugar, I top it off with cream or cheese, is it going to taste good? Yeah. But better, more important question, is it healthy? Number one. Number two, should my taste buds have executive power, absolute power guiding what I eat? And number three, is it possible for my taste buds to be re-educated to like the things that are also healthy for me? So those are all important things. So let's look at the evidence. I'm going to just go up ahead and say I'm very much in agreement that a plant-based diet is the diet for optimum health. So let's look at the evidence. That page must have gotten left off, but anyways, I'll try to do it from memory. Let's see. Okay, so first off, and I checked, what is the number one killer worldwide and in Malaysia? Anyone know? Cardiovascular, ischemic heart or cardiovascular disease. Plant-based diet has been shown very much to decrease the risk of cardiovascular disease. So in other words, a plant-based diet has been shown to significantly decrease the number one killer in Malaysia, especially in the United States and worldwide. How does it do this? Well, several different ways. First one is its effect on inflammation. A plant-based diet will decrease inflammation in the system. This is because of what happens mainly in the gut. So if you have a healthy mucosa, it is basically the gateway for your body, right? What comes in through your gut is going to go all the way through or get absorbed into your body. If you have a high saturated fat diet, animal-based diet, it's going to inflame the lining of the gut, and it's not going to be conducive to the right bacteria as well, and it's going to cause inflammation to start there, which will translate into the endothelium of my blood vessels, the inner lining of my blood vessels. They'll get harder and harder, blocked off more and more, may crack and form a clot, and that's what we call a heart attack or stroke. So a plant-based diet, first of all, decreases inflammation and helps reduce the risk that way. Secondly, the main risk factors for cardiovascular disease that any doctor has to do. For example, if I was admitting someone to the hospital and someone comes in and says, "Doc, I have chest pain, gets worse when I go upstairs, da-da-da-da-da," I take their age, all this kind of stuff. We do what's called a TIMI score to see what is the probability that this is really going to be a heart attack. So it's cholesterol, hypertension, tobacco, family history, and diabetes. You notice most of those are something that we can have control over. Our family history, not so much, right? But all the others, yes. Cholesterol in a plant-based diet is something that is improved in a very, very simple way. And we'll talk about this a little bit more when we talk about gut health. Fiber. By the way, how much cholesterol is in plant products? 0. Even some people in my class in medical school, what about avocados? What about coconuts? No. 0, 0, 0 cholesterol in plant-based products. Number one, they help with our cholesterol because they have 0 cholesterol. Number two, because they help by having fiber added to our diet in a plant-based diet, they help sequester this cholesterol and reduce it that way as well. Another question, how much fiber are in animal products, meat, dairy, and eggs? 0. So, animal-based product, cholesterol, high in saturated fat and cholesterol, and 0 fiber. Plant-based diet, 0 cholesterol, and lots of fiber. Both of these things are helping reduce my risk of cardiovascular disease. Again, number one killer, Malaysia, United States, and worldwide, is improved by a plant-based diet. I already mentioned inflammation, so joint pain, any kind of thing that's going on, a plant-based diet has, for the reasons I already mentioned, reduce overall inflammation, and even some supplements that you can take, for example, turmeric, are shown to be naturally anti-inflammatory. And some berries and nuts and seeds also have a high percentage of antioxidants, which act as anti-inflammatory in the body. Gut health, I already mentioned. Fiber, very, very key. So, this also is what we call prebiotics. You know that we have bacteria in our stomach, and we want the right bacteria to be taking over, because if the wrong bacteria takes over, that can cause all kinds of problems. A plant-based diet gives us the fiber that we need, even though we don't digest that fiber and we don't use the glucose ourselves, the bacteria in our gut can. And by having that fiber there, it's kind of like saying, here guys, buffet for you. Don't you want to come and live in my gut? So that's promoting good gut health, good healthy mucosa, and then the non-soluble fiber. Even if we, for example, eat something that has carcinogen in it. Common sense, do you want that in your system for a short time or a long time? As short as possible. So by having that good roughage, non-soluble fiber, both types of fiber are good, soluble and insoluble, our transit time is much less. Therefore, anything that has potential to damage my gut has less time to do it. It's there, and then it's eliminated like it should be in a reasonable transit time. Okay. Next letter in our acronym is E for exercise. And again, it's very appropriate that the first two letters are these two things. If you forget everything else in the lecture, but please don't do that. I mean, it's all important. But these two, as we say in the United States, are the biggest bang for your buck. If we could somehow get the whole world to eat a plant-based diet and to start to be active and exercise, this would dramatically improve the major diseases in our world, just with these 2 points. Okay, We were not designed to be sedentary. In fact, if you look how fast our world has changed just in the last 150 years, let's say 150 years ago, you would have to be going to the well and bringing up the water. You would have to carry the water in. You would have to feed the animals, pitch hay. You would have to hoe in the garden. You would have to do so much more activity. Now I can just basically say, okay, Amazon, or you don't have Uber Eats here. You have Grab delivery, right? So you would just say, boom, and it's at your doorstep, right? So now we have so much more sedentary problems that could be benefited by an active, healthy lifestyle. Now, when I say benefits, what do you think of mainly from exercise? Cardiovascular, that's probably the main one. One of the things that I want to touch on, though, because let's go to cardiovascular first. Blood pressure, reduced. Cholesterol, reduced. It helps reduce my total cholesterol by bringing up my good cholesterol, getting rid of that bad cholesterol in my system, and therefore decreasing my cardiovascular disease. One of the things that I wanted to focus on, though, is we don't realize how much of a benefit exercise is not only to my body, but to my mind. They've done many, many studies that comparing regular routine exercise with what's called an SSRI. That's the main type of antidepressant we use today. Very many potential side effects. I'm not going to say I've never used them. I've used them quite a bit, in fact. But they have potential side effects, and sometimes their effectiveness wears off as the months go by. There are many things that we can do to naturally increase our serotonin. One of the main ones is exercise. Has anyone heard of that runner's high feeling when you're like exercising and then, oh, yeah, I feel good and invigorated by it? That's one of the things that just helps the body produce more of the serotonin, the feel-good chemical, if you will, in our body. How much exercise should we get? Anyone know? The current recommendation is about 30 minutes, 5 times a week. That's going to give us some good benefit. Now, it's true, the more I exercise, the more the benefits come, but this is the most dramatic when we've done studies that if you exercise 30 minutes, that can be brisk walking, that can actually be even less time if you're doing very strenuous, like heavy lifting, resistance exercises. But just so you can know, again, we're just doing condensed version here. 30 minutes, 5 times a week is what we can get optimum benefit from exercise. And that's something that's doable if we break it up, and it can be broken up in pieces throughout the day. That's something that's sustainable. It's not like we're in January, right? So everyone's doing their New Year's resolutions that are usually done by next week or so. This is something that's actually doable. You can do 30 minutes or even less and build up to 30 minutes a day. And this has been shown to greatly increase not only our physical, but our mental health. Okay. Moving on. W, for water. As we look at the cosmos and try to analyze the atmospheres of different planets, what is one of the main things that they look for to see, I wonder if life is possible on that planet? It's water. What are we made of mostly? Yeah, water. Around 70%, depending on our body makeup. But water is essential for life. About 97.5% of the water on our earth we can't drink. It still serves a purpose. It's helping regulate the temperature of our earth. But that much water is salt water. And of the 2.5% that's fresh, Only a very small fraction is available to us because most of that is in ice, in Antarctica and in Greenland. So we really need to realize what a precious commodity it is to have just cool, clean water. And unfortunately, we don't appreciate this like we should. You maybe know, or maybe you have been one of these people yourself. I know some people that never drink water. It's coffee, soda, or tea or energy drinks. And we really need to get back to appreciating how good for our health just a cool glass of water is. How do we know if we're drinking enough water? Well, this may surprise you. I'm really not big on the recommendations because you can't go by them really. I personally, this is kind of just an anecdotal story, the most tired I've ever been in my life, I was with my wife, and we were hiking out of Grand Canyon in June or July. I can't remember. It was hot. And I had a big pack, and my mattress that night had gone flat, so I didn't sleep much. I was very, very tired and very, very hot. That day, I drank almost 10 liters of water in one day. But let's say on an average day, if I'm just sitting at my desk typing in a nice air-conditioned room like we are right now, I may need much, much less than that. So how do I tell? I really don't like that 8 glasses a day stuff because it really, really varies. I like to put it this way. I'm sweating a little bit. Say I fall into the mud. It's raining outside, I slip, I fall into the mud, the shirt gets wet and dirty, and it has to be clean. I say, you have to tell me when the shirt gets clean, but you can't see the shirt. You can just see the water that comes out of the basin after I clean it. So clean it, dump out the water, and you see brown, muddy water. No, you need more water, right? Put more water in, keep repeating until the water runs clear. And then without seeing the shirt, you can tell shirt is clean, right? Same with us. If your urine has that dark yellow appearance, what does that mean? Yeah, not clean enough, because you think of the water just cleaning internally. That's what it's doing. The byproducts, the metabolic waste that our body is producing gets filtered by the kidneys and excreted. So if it's very, very dark yellow, not good. It needs to be that light, clear color to know that you're getting enough water. And again, this can vary greatly. If you're inside air-conditioned environment versus outside digging in a hot environment, you may need to adjust that significantly. Okay, but that's a good way, I think is the best way of seeing whether or not we're having enough water. And what are the benefits of drinking water? Well, temperature regulation, sweat if you need to, is very, very much dependent on how well hydrated I am. GI health, we already talked about this. This goes hand in hand with fiber. If you're drinking enough water, the fiber has what it needs to keep things moving, and it can greatly increase our GI health. Cardiovascular risk. Drinking water actually helps decrease my chance of a heart attack. If I have to pump through a pipe, let's say water versus honey, which one's going to take more force? The honey, right? Because it's more viscous. So same thing, if your blood is thick, it's not well hydrated, greater stress on the heart, more chance that something bad can happen. And mental acuity. If you've ever been extremely dehydrated, this can go very, very bad. But if you're just constantly mildly dehydrated, it also can give this brain fog, not really being completely clear in the mind. So proper hydration, very, very key as well for optimum health. Speaking of finding planets where life is able to be sustained, one of the main things is what kind of star. It has to be something like our sun. We are in what's called, do you have the story of Goldilocks in Malaysia? Not too hot, not too cold. We're around our sun in what's called the Goldilocks zone because it's very, very important. Not too hot, not too cold. We're right perfect around our sun where it's benefiting us, giving us the energy, the warmth that we need, but not boiling us to death, and we're not too far that it just freezes us to death. Before we get into the benefits of sun and sunlight, caution, because there is a potential risk here, right? So sunburn, especially for the young ones and especially for those of us that are more fair-skinned. In Malaysia, you have quite the spectrum of skin tones, right? You have very white, very dark, or somewhere in between. So even though there is a risk of sunburn, which would increase your risk of skin cancer, that should not deter us from reaping the benefits of sunlight, because they are definitely there. Now, obviously the main one is vitamin D. So we get some vitamin D through our diets. Even some plant-based things have vitamin D, but the main thing is just that sunlight, UV light, hitting the cholesterol oil in our skin and converts it to vitamin D, or a precursor that then gets reabsorbed into our body and converted into the active form in our liver and kidneys. So what does vitamin D do? First of all, vitamin D deficiency is very big worldwide. In fact, I have been vitamin D deficient. So if you haven't checked it, you might want to mention to your doctor to check your vitamin D level, because it is key. Probably most of us eat more than enough calcium in our diet, but what we eat and what we absorb are two different things. We can absorb as little as just 10% of our dietary calcium when we're vitamin D deficient. That triples up to 30% if I have enough, if my vitamin D levels are normal. So vitamin D, first and foremost, for bone health, calcium absorption. For women, this is even more important, menopausal women, because, of course, osteoporosis is an increased risk. So vitamin D primarily helps us with our bone health. But vitamin D has many other functions in the body. Immune system. This is an amazing one that just during the last pandemic, they did a study. I've unfortunately been in a hospital here in Malaysia, and it's just like the United States. You have usually two beds. One is closest to the corridor, and one is closest to the window. Of people that were admitted with COVID-19, which one, when they studied it, which one do you think fared better? The one that was close to the corridor or the one that was close to the window? Yes. Possibly, I can't say for sure, but we know that vitamin D is an immune booster, an immune stimulant. So another benefit from adequate sunlight exposure and vitamin D. Mental health. Vitamin D has been shown to help with mood, our gut health as well. And you have a privilege here in Malaysia because you're right next to the equator. My wife over there is from Norway, and this is a big problem during the wintertime because the sun just comes out a little bit, and maybe it's overcast, and plus you're all bundled up with gloves and a hat. So vitamin D deficiency can be a big problem over there. So take advantage here. You're only supposed to get around 30 minutes a day. But again, that can vary greatly for some of us that are darker or lighter. And then, of course, where you are compared to the equator comes into the equation as well. But ballpark, let's say, is 30 minutes a day to reap the benefits of vitamin D and all the other things that can do besides helping our bones. Is also been shown to lower blood pressure. I mean, that's why people like to go to these resorts and just lie out in the sun, right? It's to get a tan, but also it just has a calming effect, which then brings down our blood pressure, one of the main risk factors for cardiovascular disease. So we see that sunlight is also a very, very appropriate levels of sunlight is very key for optimum health as well. Okay, temperance. This is maybe a word we don't use that much. The definition essentially is we abstain from that which is bad and control or moderate that which is good. So, even if these were veggie burgers down here in Savor, I hope we can all agree that's a bit too much for one meal, right? We want to know, even if something is good, we have to be able to control it. And this principle is tied in with all the rest, because if I know what is right, and most people do, even people that are addicted to things, but I can't control and incorporate that, that affects how I'm going to interact with the rest of the principles that we're dealing with today, right? So this is very important also in the respect of getting away from the notion that more is necessarily better. Sometimes people will incorrectly think, well, if the recommendation is this much, and this is good, that means that this much is even better. Not only is that not true, it can be the exact opposite effect. Let's go with exercise, for example. Many, many benefits to exercise, but is it possible to overdo it? Absolutely, absolutely. And they have actually studied marathon runners. Right after a marathon has been run, they can check the blood levels, and their hearts have actually been damaged, stressed. They're actually increased risk of having heart attacks right after a marathon. Sadly, in my home state of California, some crazy radio show did a promotion where they had a water drinking competition. Again, we went over water, very beneficial. The winner of that competition passed away. She had to be hospitalized, and she eventually died, and the family sued that company. And even in my example, hiking up the Grand Canyon in hot weather with a pack on my back, drinking almost 10 liters of water, I had to be careful. I had to take in salt. Otherwise, your body is not able to do it, and that is a serious problem when your sodium level gets dysregulated. It affects the brain, affects the conduction of the heart, and it can be fatal. Vitamins. I've had patients that were on loads and loads of vitamins, and we talked about vitamin D, for example. I had to actually stop someone taking vitamin D because their level was way above the recommended dose, and that's dangerous because it can cause your calcium to go too high. And vitamin D, for example, is one of those vitamins we can store in our fat. It's a fat-soluble vitamin, so your body just stores it and stores it and stores it, and it can just get out of control. So the principle of temperance affects everything else. We need to know that's bad for me. I'm not going to take any of it. But even the good things, I need to control. There's possibility of getting too much, whether that's calories, exercise, vitamins, what have you. Temperance is key. Okay, winding down. As you can tell, I do have some, I'm not an expert, but I do like cosmology. What is one of the things that we also look at as far as what can support life on the planet? That blue strip that you see is our atmosphere, the air that we breathe. So our atmosphere here on this earth is almost 80%, 78%, I believe, nitrogen, and 21% oxygen, and 0.004% carbon dioxide. So this, too, is something that is very, very important and is becoming a bigger problem with pollution, right? Breathing, personally, though, is something that, excuse me, I repeated myself, that can be tied to my health in a positive or negative way. Have you ever seen, hopefully you haven't been one of the people, but have you ever seen someone have a panic attack? Okay, something automatically happens with the breathing. Do they take nice, slow, deep breaths, or what happens? They start to hyperventilate. So the way we breathe also has something to do with our health. Something I have to remind myself, too, is our posture as well. If I'm slouched over, my lungs aren't able to expand. The last percentage of air is never cleared. So to actually have a good posture and consciously once in a while take a deep breath is also very, very key for my health. Now, this has been even recognized by many religions, right? That it's a spiritual thing. Well, okay, maybe, but not necessarily so. It's also just a physiological thing. If I take a deep breath, I'm able to stretch certain receptors. And what happens to my heart rate? It comes down. I just feel more relaxed. That's why if someone is having a panic attack, one of the main things to tell them, be careful how you do it, just like calmly tell them, take a slow, deep breath in through your nose and out your mouth. Nothing necessarily spiritual is happening. It's just stretching certain receptors in their lungs and in their carotids to help them slow down their heartbeat and relax. I still get, if you've noticed, I still get a little bit nervous when I have to speak up front, but if I was a teenager, I would have never come up here because I was locking up and I just couldn't breathe. I had to tell myself to get over that. Just take one slow, deep breath. And that just helps get things going and relaxes. So this is also a key thing for the rest of our body because my breathing is the thing that I can go the least amount of time without, right? I can go days, weeks without eating. I can go quite a long time without water, but without breathing, only a few minutes, right? So to have proper respiration, correct posture, consciously deep breathing, clearing out the impurities and bringing in the good air is something that also is very, very important for ideal health. Not just for our lungs. I don't know if asthma is a big problem here in Malaysia. Where I come from, it's a big, big problem. And obviously, good, pure air is key. And now I've traveled quite a bit, not a lot, but enough to see that your city here, to your credit, is a very clean city. For the size of this city to be this clean, I'm not going to say the names of the cities, but there are some cities that are very, very dirty. I sometimes flying into them, I'm like, oh man, that layer of grayish brown stuff that I'm flying into right now is what I'm going to be breathing for the next few weeks. Not a good feeling. So not only for our lungs, but the amazing thing is that they've done studies in China mainly where they have these huge cities, Beijing, for example. Chronically being exposed to that air greatly affects the mind. It significantly increases our lifetime risk of developing dementia. So I don't care how clean of a city you have here, it can't compare to the air out in nature. So be it KL or wherever you are, try to get out in nature once in a while because the air there is much, much purer. That's because just the wind blowing through the trees, the creek or river running down the mountain, the waves crashing against the shore, purifies and charges the air, even to give you a sense of well-being. The ions that are produced there just make you feel better, improve your mood, and the air is purer, better for my lungs, and better for my mind. If you are not able to make it out, there have been some studies done that what we call a HEPA filter is good to get, and that has been shown to reduce respiratory symptoms in people's homes by the mold spores, the pollen that it can get out of your air. So pure, clean air, another element that is essential for ideal health. Okay, again, in Malaysia, do you have the expression sometimes that less is more? This very much applies to our next principle. Rest. More and more science is finding that this is much more important than we had previously thought. We have a lot of cycles in nature, and that includes in our bodies. Women have cycles, we have eating cycles, but we also have sleeping cycles. And it's important to get into a good routine pattern, and I can empathize if you, it's hard for me. Yeah, it's hard for me too as a doctor, sometimes getting calls at all times of the day and night. But This has been studied, especially in nurses. I think we have a few nurses here that have had to work rotating shifts, or even doctors that have to work rotating shifts. So, 1 week you're working the mornings, 1 week you're working afternoons, 1 week you're working nights. Do you think that's good for their health? No, in fact, it's terrible. They have increased risk of so many other problems because they're never able to get into a good pattern. Just when they get used to one, they're having to adjust and move to the other all the time. They're never able to get into a good pattern with their melatonin levels, their light and dark cycles, and it negatively affects them greatly. So, adequate sleep is important. One of the downsides, again, of living in a big city is that we have a lot of overstimulation. Again, your city is pretty quiet compared, but I've, for example, spent some time in Manhattan, and there, when I left, I was like, what is that? Silence, because I really had not heard it for about a week. They're constantly honking, shouting, neon lights, overstimulation that doesn't let us get into that deep, restful sleep. And that is a problem even more with devices, because we, even though we don't have to go out somewhere, we're bringing that stimulation to ourselves right up until we go to sleep. And that can greatly, greatly negatively affect our health. So the recommendation for adults is 7 to 8 hours, probably better closer to 8 hours. And for younger people, 8 to 9 hours a night. Okay? So this is especially important for young people because they're going through window periods where they're developing certain parts of their brain, their abstract thinking. We call them window periods because once you're out of that period, you're never going to continue to develop that. So when you're in that, it's essential that you develop everything to the best of your ability, whether that's speech, whether that's walking, whether that's whatever, during the development of that child. And teenagers very often now are sometimes moms would come to me and I kind of just, frustrated. That my teenager is tired all the time. So I turned to the teenager and said, okay, what time do you go to bed? At 1 o'clock in the morning. What are you doing up until 1 o'clock in the morning? I'm on my phone. I said, okay. Very easy answer. Maybe you're always tired because you're up till 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning on weekends on social media. So we have a very big problem getting this, and the effects of this throughout life are very, very profound. Memory, hand-eye coordination. I was in a car accident after being awake for 30 hours as an intern. I remember it. It was like slow motion. I'm like, okay, I just could not respond. It wasn't my fault. I could have prevented it, though. It's just like my brain and my hands were like, oh, I couldn't do it. I had been up for 30-plus hours. It affects your hand-eye coordination, your memory, and your lifetime risk of dementia for those that don't get adequate sleep, again, is significantly increased. Now we're talking about nightly sleep, but there's another cycle of sleep, or rest, I should say, that's also very key for us. I'm not a historian, but I like to study history whenever I can. Maybe someone else knows this trivia question. Does anyone know what the Russian or the Bolshevik Revolution and the French Revolution had in common in relation to one certain cycle of time? What was it? Yeah, both of those tried to alter the 7-day week. I believe the Russians were 10 and the French were 5 and 6, something like this. Yeah, whatever, something. Didn't last very long. It just, you could say for different reasons. I'd like to propose that because naturally we are on a 7-day cycle where we're supposed to just completely unplug. Because who cares if I'm getting good rest every night if I'm getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and checking my emails and doing this 7 days a week, burning the candle at both ends, as we say. I'm also going to have serious, serious health problems. I was created to at least one day a week completely put that aside and just rest. So both these types of rest, crucial for optimum ideal health. And if we do that, the remaining 6 days are going to be more efficient because I'm going to have a clearer mind. I'm going to have more energy. I'm going to have a better work-life balance. So rest, less is more, is very crucial for ideal health. I mean, less work, more rest, of course. Lastly, trust in divine help. As you've noticed, I've had several references to cosmology, and I picked this picture because sometimes, even for myself, I just need to focus and recalibrate. It's good just to go on a clear night and look up because it gives you a better perspective of who you are. Does anyone know the speed of light? You can Google it quickly, but I looked it up in kilometers. It's 299,000 kilometers an hour, a second. Our minds really can't comprehend it. That's approximately 7 times around the world in 1 second. How far could that go in an hour? A day? A month? Our minds can't even understand that. Does anyone know how far the closest star to us, the star system is to us, to our sun, our star? It's called, 4 to 5 years. It's called Alpha Centauri. 4 to 5 light years. We really can't comprehend how big the universe is. That's just the closest star to us. So, when we're talking about all these principles today, I think a very important concept is to see that there is something bigger than myself. We really can't comprehend how small we are. In an infinitely big universe, we're just a speck of a galaxy. And that speck of a galaxy, we're just a speck of a star in the solar system. And then a speck on this tiny little planet. We are so small, we really can't comprehend it. So to understand that there is something bigger to ourselves, we're not talking about health so I can just go and live a selfish life and I can feel a little bit better while I'm doing it. We're talking about looking at the big picture as well, to understand that there is something bigger than myself and appealing to that for help, for assistance in achieving some of these changes that I can do for optimum health. So my desire is that we will not just be able to ourselves incorporate some of these things for optimum health, but may help others try to find true fulfillment in obtaining this optimum health as well. Thank you. And I guess we can have some time for questions. I'll try to field any.
Yes, there's a Q&A.
I don't think we need the mic. Right, okay. You said that the plant-based actually has no cholesterol in it, right? Doesn't our body need some form of cholesterol?
Our body makes plenty of cholesterol. So we synthesize cholesterol, and that sometimes can be affected by several different things. Our genetics, unfortunately, is one of the things. But there's lifestyle practices too. So even our mental state can affect that, but also how much fiber we have in our diet and how much exercise I'm doing, because those two things can help reduce what my body is making. Even if I'm eating 0 cholesterol, my liver is making it, and having a proper diet and lifestyle can help regulate even what I do make myself.
High cholesterol.
The qualifier I'll always say is talk to your doctor. Yes, I don't want to say stop your statins type of thing, but yes, this can help naturally, no side effects. In fact, the side effects are good side effects, right? Because if you exercise, do resistance training, that's going to help our minds, all the other things we outlined, and help lower our cholesterol. If I eat a plant-based diet, the fiber is going to help lower my cholesterol and my overall gut health, all the other things we talked about as well. Yes.
On the topic of water, there's such thing as hydrogen water, alkaline water. What's your comment?
Yeah, that is not so much the low-hanging fruit. The main thing is that we get enough water and it's clean water. Yeah, if it's alkaline, it can help a little bit by how it interacts with our body, because you don't want too acidic water, for example. I wouldn't lose too much sleep about the pH of my water. Yeah, it can help a little bit to have it alkaline, but the main thing is I'm getting enough and it's clean water. Yes. I have to be honest. I'm not really acquainted with what hydrogen water is. Obviously, water is hydrogen and oxygen. I don't know if that means something about the ratio or something. Yeah.
I have a question on the topic of water. You mentioned that when you were doing exercise and you had sweating a lot, you were drinking a lot and you were taking in salts as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that you may not sweat enough and take too much salt, and then that would cause any health problems with the body, maybe some imbalances? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, so acutely, that would be hard to do because, say I'm hiking out of the Grand Canyon, it's better to take a little bit too much than too little, because your kidneys can just get rid of that. But if you're every day putting extra salt on your veggie burger, then your body has to constantly be trying to get rid of that, and it will retain more water to try to balance that out, which can make, for example, blood pressure to go up because more fluid, more volume, your heart has to pump harder. And for people with congestive heart failure, that's a big problem because then it's not able to pump as well. Fluid then backs up into the lungs, legs, and that can be a problem. So acutely, not so much. In fact, it's better probably to take a little bit too much, take those salt tablets or some crackers or something if you're going to be having to drink large amounts of water. But for the long run, yes, absolutely, too much salt can have detrimental effects to our health.
For sun exposure,
Yes.
is the morning sun better or afternoon sun is bad, or is there such a thing?
Okay, so also taking into account the burning, there's more potential, 11 to 3 o'clock, because the sun is more direct to get a sunburn. So as far as anything else, I don't think it matters so much. I tend to think it's better in the morning because that's also going to help set your biological clock for sleep that night. That's the one main thing I tell patients that have depression, because you're going to kill multiple birds with one stone if you take a morning walk. You take a walk in the morning, I'm not sure if I discussed this, you're going to get exercise. You're going to get fresh air because the air is the cleanest in the morning. You're going to get sunshine, which is going to give you better rest that night. So you're basically hitting 4 of those things by taking a brisk morning walk, and that's going to be giving you the most efficient bang for your buck, as it were. So in the morning, it's perfectly fine to get your sun in that time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, if you're going to be watching your kids at the beach in Penang for 2 hours straight and then getting sunburned like I did a few weeks ago, yeah, sunblock is okay. But just for going for a walk, and it's going to be 20, 30 minutes, you're actually blocking what's going to give you benefit. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for sharing your evening with us. And if there's no more questions, I think we'll hand it back to the MC for closing things out.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I hope this simple new start principle will help you to kickstart your new year for the better. All right. So just simple tips, exercise.